Let's talk about confidence for a little bit. Somebody asked me in one of my YouTube videos about how to find that confidence. They feel that it's potentially holding them back, that they have this lack of confidence. So I wanted to talk about it in this video. A couple of things I'll say, though, that I think is important is that you don't really need confidence, not in the conventional way. What I mean by this is that I don't think you need to kind of posture as this extrovert, charming individual who rolls natural 20s on your every social encounter that you engage in. What I'm trying to get at is if you have the kind of confidence within yourself and what you think you're capable of and what that means to you, and that will potentially and most certainly be outward facing in some meaningful way, indirect and direct. Indirect as in, whenever you are talking with folks about doing art and being creative, you will not be so self-deprecating. And then also confidence in the sense of like you actually can show it in your work, that you have some competency, which breeds confidence. But I don't think it's this kind of classical thought of confidence. So I want to kind of make that clear right off the bat. The second thing that I think is important to kind of recognize about confidence is that, it is something that I don't think, if that's not your personality, if you have a personality type that is a very specific way, and you don't want to be this type of individual because it's just not who you are, right? That I don't think it needs to be that. I don't think you need to sacrifice who you are as an individual to be, quote unquote, this confident persona. That kind of goes back to the kind of earlier statement. But I can see how you could recognize that you should have some ability and some self value that you want to try to achieve, even when nobody's looking, right? Like when nobody's around you. Are you just confident amongst yourself? And that might be a bigger thing to worry about that I think is reasonable to worry about. It doesn't necessarily attack your personality, right? It doesn't attack your natural interests. It's just kind of like, listen, I need to be confident because I know that when I'm, being so down on myself and so hard on myself, that it only makes me feel less confident. And it's like essentially self-harm. And that is obviously unhealthy, regardless if you're extrovert, introvert, omnivert, metavert. I just throwing words. Drawer-vert, painter-vert, Sorry, I just had like cheesy ass pasta right now, so my throat is all phlegmy, but I feel great. It was really tasty. And I had some coffee earlier, so I'm feeling real spicy. Anyway, so let's talk about kind of what I think one can do to quote unquote build confidence. And remember, it's under this context. I think it's really important for people to respect that I genuinely am not a big fan of the perspective of whole hustle culture, right? And that is the way to build some sort of evaluation of confidence. This to me is by far, I think, the least productive use of this paradigm of building people up towards some sort of, ability that resembles this kind of like hardworking, strong individual through just grinding and working your ass off, like the David Goggins strategy, right? Like who's carrying the boats? Who's gonna be carrying the boats? I don't think that there's not a place for that type of mentality. I do think it's really reasonable to want people to be strong in mind. I like to use a better term instead of like trying to be, a hustler, but basically being more stoic. I think it's a much better and more admirable approach because stoicism presents itself as somebody who also has empathy, patience, in all of the ways that we mark our superheroes. Like our favorite superheroes tend to have these features. You know, some of our greatest historical heroes, whether we know for a fact that they are like this or not, tend to have these features. And so I think it's important to understand that's usually kind of where I'm coming from. It's really from this perspective of like being able to have this grittiness, but this softness, you know, a good balance of all the things I think make somebody appreciate your company. And what I would say to that is that that's typically how I think breeds confidence, which is this sense of being comfortable around this individual and around yourself. Like you are comfortable being alone with yourself, you're comfortable, or other people are comfortable being around you. I think this is a great metric of some self-confidence. And I think that if you can find ways to manage these two expectations, you will find some truth and some ultimate value in yourself that I think is probably the most important takeaway from anything I'm about to say here. Because confidence, specifically speaking, it just allows you to make decisions more effectively. And if you're more comfortable around yourself, so for instance, you're like, hey, look, I am going to paint something. And if it isn't good, that's okay. Right? Because I am making this choice to paint and draw or do something that I'm not comfortable with even. Maybe like you are trying to draw something that you haven't drawn a lot of and you're feeling uncomfortable by the sake of what that looks like and how that feels. I think that that's totally reasonable perspective to have. You know? But if you have this like feeling of like I know I have to like paint this stuff or have to draw or do this or that this, and you feel very like anxious and you feel really scared, or you feel, you know, again, lack of confidence. That's typically where these feelings kind of spawn from. It is that lack of confidence. And so the power of confidence can bring this to you. And that's like I said, being comfortable even around yourself. Because imagine the alternative, which is being around others and having them basically project onto you kind of your insecurities, even if they're not doing it directly, just you are applying it to them for them. This is very common, obviously. Like if you are, it's a performance issue, right? Where if you're in front of a large group of people trying to do something impressive or interesting, you get nerves. And if you can build that comfortable sensibilities around strangers, then obviously that's going to build your confidence. You know, I remember when I did like my first teaching gig, and I had to like speak in front of several students. And this is the first time I ever did it, like speak about art and teaching and a group of people that I didn't know. And I felt very comfortable and very confident. And I remember my buddy who gave me the gig was just like, "Oh my God, you're like a natural teacher." And I don't know if that's true. I think it's just I was very comfortable and I was very confident that whatever I will say here, people will give me a bit of grace, you know, which they did. And looking back, a lot of what I taught at the time, I don't think was like some of the stuff I do now. Like I think I'm obviously a better teacher now. And at the time, I don't think I was. I don't think I nearly was as good as it felt, because I was really getting people to react, and there was a large, you know, reaction to the kind of things I was saying. And it felt good. It felt like, hey, listen, I'm like a really good teacher, you know? But the things I was teaching, I honestly don't think that they're as valuable as it felt at the time. I'll give you an example of something that I think that I said at that moment that I don't believe in anymore. And I don't think it's a great way to teach people. I remember somebody was asking me, like, what was I thinking when I was painting something? I was painting something in front of them. They're like, what's going through your mind? And I explained to them, like, I'm thinking about design, I'm thinking about perspective, and I went through the kind of a laundry list of stuff that on paper I think makes sense to say. I was thinking about the forms and what audiences and this and that and that, and it feels really good. It feels super smart. And with time, I realized that that's not necessarily true, though. I'm not thinking about much of anything usually when I'm doing a lot of these demonstrations. I don't really think about a lot of things even when I am doing these kind of full-fledged designs. And if I am, it's always something that almost has nothing to do with the painting quality and like the approach, and has more to do with like what I think the client needs, which is an unsatisfactory. There you go. Sorry, I had to say like 5 times. Answer for a student. Why? Because if you think about it, if I'm just like, yeah, I'm thinking about, whether the client will appreciate this because of the target demographic and what I think a 5-year old would feel about this because it's for that audience member, like I think that has its value, absolutely. But I also think that when people were asking that, they were just watching me paint and they saw I was just like doing some stuff that was like completely a mystery to them. They still couldn't understand how I was able to execute certain paint strokes so effectively. And that's what I thought I needed to give an answer to. And I believe that's what they were looking for, right? My answer was wrong, though, in my mind. Now, looking back. Because the answer that it really is happening, what's really going on, from what I can tell, is that they're just witnessing somebody who is just really sharpened their skills over long, long stretches of times of doing this stuff, Meaning that I've been painting for so long and I've been drawing for so long, like I don't think about these things anymore. I just kind of do them. And the best example I can usually give is like walking. Like, do you think about walking? Most of you do not, right? You just do it. But there was a time where you didn't walk. And so if you want to get better at this thing that you're seeing me do, then you need to walk more, right? To the point where it's second nature. Essentially, like, you need to practice perspective, anatomy, forms, designing, all of these things all the time, consistently, and forever, potentially. And that's kind of the short-term answer to what I usually give. I usually go even further. But you can see how that starts to breed a much better answer that I think satisfies the question honestly. And I think that's more important than just giving the surface level answer. It's very clear surface level answers that you see online that many, many people give isn't enough for a lot of these young artists. They feel good because there's a sense of competent. There's a name for this. Oh man, what is the name? Competent. I'm thinking about it. I mean, dang, there is a term for this. So if you want to look it up, but basically, it's like a false competence that is established. It's like an allusion to competence. I forget exactly. It's really perfectly coined, the term. Like once you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly right. Shoot, I don't know, can't think of it. But it's the sense of false competence. Maybe that is what I don't know. I'm definitely not feeling that that's it. False competence. Because it's false competence postures. Like if you watch a video and they give you some really good instruction, you leave that video thinking that you know more than you actually do. And then when you put it to practice, I'm sure many of you guys, as I'm explaining this, are like, oh my gosh, I feel this all the time. Like you watch a tutorial, then you try to do the tutorial and you don't accomplish any meaningful progress, at least it feels like, right? That's the false competence problem. And so And it's like an illusion. You know, it's like you feel that it's happening. And so my answers when I first was teaching were a lot of these types of false competence type of answers, like answers that made people feel more competent than they actually were. And so I've changed kind of my step and tune here. I'm a lot more rigid, and I'm also a lot more open-ended about who I'm talking to and what it means to talk about growth. And this has found its way to be a much more effective tool in the many years that I've been teaching to get people to really accomplish some incredible goals. And it's been wonderful to see whenever I do see it. So this is a good example of just like when I felt confident in front of a group of people, I would tell them these answers. And because it was with such confidence, you know, people just believed it. And for what it's worth, I don't think anything I said was inherently wrong. I just think that there's better answers. And I still believe as I teach more and more, I come up with better answers to the same kinds of questions. And some answers just have never changed as well. I'm always giving this literally the same piece of advice over and over again. Countless amounts of pieces of advice, but some just stay the same over the many years of me doing this. So clearly there is like also in my mind, there's also like a fundamental truth to a lot of things. But this is what confidence can do, right? Like I felt confident, and so people really were more open to it. Now, I think a lot of people understand this, and I am absolutely going to say that it's not important that you feel this way when talking in front of other people. I'm just saying that is the most extreme representation of this feeling that you are not good enough that typically presents itself, right? And people feel or understand almost deeply exactly what I'm getting at when I say when you present yourself in front of others, that stage fright typically is a bit of that uncomfort, that lack of confidence in front of others. But what happens in the privacy of just your room? I do think that that happens as well. And that is probably even more dangerous because with the other example of presenting yourself with confidence in front of others, especially in a performative way, makes perfect sense that most people just can't do that. It's pretty nerve-wracking. And I think it's understandable to not be amazing at that. I think that's okay. I don't think that I need to convince you guys that you need to learn how to do that. I don't think that matters. In the grand scheme of like things you should probably spend your time really perfecting and getting better at. But what I will say about this, like when you're by yourself, there's no one else in the room, and you're still kind of having this stage fright just with yourself, this is a much more fascinating challenge because you are only there and yet you are still feeling afraid when there's no one looking. Nobody's watching you draw bad. Nobody's watching you do bad art, and nobody's watching you. Only you are watching you. And yet yourself is like, this is terrible. I suck. Everything sucks. And it's fascinating because why would you do that? Like, why are you so hard on yourself? You know, fundamentally, when you think about it, like think about it outside of, or in the abstract, like what true benefit do you get for being so mean to yourself? You know? And let me be clear, self-criticism is incredibly healthy if it's healthy self-criticism. For instance, oh, I can probably improve on my anatomy. I need to do some more anatomy stuff. Oh, this isn't quite great because like I can see that I'm falling apart in certain aspects of my forms, so I should probably do more form studies. Oh, this isn't awesome because, I haven't studied enough of this type of design paradigm, or, like the laundry list The laundry list is long. You understand? Like, it can go on for eons on all the things that one could improve upon. I think this is not a mystery to many of y'all. You know? And self-criticism, this is kind of what I'm getting at, is not the thing I'm being critical of here. It's the idea of being so mean to yourself, saying like, I'll never make it through art. Like, why would anyone hire me? Like, what's the point of doing this? Everything's fucked and I'm wasting my time on this stupid stuff. These types of thoughts. I think if you have a pretty meaningful conversation about the state of the industry, about like, okay, the industry is going through a bit of trials and error, and there's a lot of unknown things going on in the world, that constant conflicts, trade wars, and all of these things that make you feel like, damn, dude, was I born in the wrong era type vibe, you know? I think those are obviously things that your brain can latch onto, but you can also find ways to think through it. It's funny, I talking about like how some people, I generally believe, have a relatively powerful excuse when it comes to pursuing their art career. When I was talking about stuff that's going on with the Ukraine artists, and I had a lot of people from Ukraine message me both privately and publicly on some of these videos, and are like, yeah, I mean, my town was blown to smithereens, or friends of mine died, or I know a buddy whose his friend, he lost his eyesight during the war. I've seen people talk that are absolutely in these circumstances be like, oh yeah, but I'm out here. I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to find a way to make a better life for myself. And I'm just like, damn, dude, what? That's freaking inspiring, you know? And let me be clear. There are some others that don't feel that way, that feel like I have a duty to my nation. There's just more important things on my mind than trying to be a concept artist. And I am also inspired by that. You feel me? Like, I am just saying that when I see people who are actually in these circumstances, that I have no clue how I'll navigate it myself if I was ever put in this situation. And I would like not to think about it. But I hope to think that because of this vibe of optimism and confidence that I typically have in myself, that I will find something, you know? I would do something. I just don't know what. You know what I mean? And this goes to kind of the bigger point about like the confidence in oneself, because if you are sitting there constantly belittling yourself, nobody else is invited, just yourself, and you're just giving yourself a proper roasting every single paint stroke that you make. Bro, what? Why? Again, being self-critical, understand that the genuine circumstances that you're surrounding yourself with, that you're struggling with in your own personal life. This is not what I'm being critical of. I think that's totally reasonable. But at some point, you have to recognize that you got to make a decision on what you want to try to accomplish. And this is what the confidence part, self-confidence part, can do a really good job of. For instance, I think that whenever somebody is a lot more confident with themselves, they're more likely to take some challenges and risks, because they feel, hey, listen, I will be able to figure something out as long as I start to pave the road. You know? Others will be like, yeah, times are tough, but when are they not? Maybe if I do this and that and that and this, I can find some alternative to my situation. And being confident in that. There is no guarantee that you're even close to being right. There's no guarantee that you're entirely wrong either. I just think that it's really important to recognize that when you build that confidence in yourself, you truly find more and more opportunities because you're looking for them. I always tell people, and I'm gonna make an entire video about this a little bit more in depth amongst my several dozen topics that I have a list that I still haven't been able to plow through, which is a good thing. It means I got a lot of things to talk about. Only in the last week or two, I kind of haven't done it a lot, not because I didn't want to, but because of just, yeah, life. Anyway, the idea of like natural born talents. I always try to tell people, like, I don't really believe that it's an important feature in somebody's abilities in the long term, in the grand scheme of things. But I do think that it is important to recognize what strengths you might have. And I always talk about one of my favorite strengths that I think I absolutely have is this like unbridled arrogance that I think it could do so many things. I'm aggressively optimistic. And a lot of times this is not the best, a lot of times when I try to anticipate what I can accomplish and then I set forth to try to do it, I failed, and sometimes failed miserably. But what's really important to take away from this is that I learn from these, and I also am really open to feedback, especially if I start to receive it more and more consistently around certain things that I've done. It becomes harder for me to ignore. I absolutely think that this is a good combination to have these two things be true. My ability to be like, yeah, I can make a manga in 24 hours. Yeah. And then not be able to do it. But then I will learn why I couldn't do it. I'll learn very quickly what was the challenges that are in my way, and if I want to accomplish this, what I might do to overcome this. You know what I mean? And this is really fascinating to me because it's very obvious that me feeling like I can do something, like, hey, yeah, I could be a character concept artist. I remember, like, when I went to school, people were like, you shouldn't do that because there's no, like, it's so competitive and it's like one of the hardest things to do. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, that's not the advice I'm asking for. I'm asking you how to do it. You're just telling me that it's hard. I accept that it's hard. What's the next steps? Help me out. Like, what do I need to do? You got to do lots of anatomy, this and that, and just a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll just start doing that. You know, I don't really push it any further. I'm just like, okay, that's what I got to do. That's what I got to do. It is what it is. And I think that accompanied with my ability to at least get some feedback from people and to be able to respect that feedback, generally speaking, tends to really help me in the long term in a lot of the things that I do. And I think this is a really important feature of my ability, or sorry, my overall skill that I've obtained over the many years of doing this. Specifically having the confidence to kind of pursue this. So kind of walking through this idea of like building this confidence and building this ability to like not be so mean to yourself, like just being like, just fucking chilling, trying not to hurt your feelings every second you try to make a piece of artwork. The advice I typically would give to this is that if you have a hard time finding that confidence in you, or absolutely aggressively mean to yourself, then the best thing to do in my mind, is to try to like, you know, outsource your opinion about yourself. Like have people that are trusted, beloved individuals that are in your inner circles to kind of give you feedback and share with them often. Because these people will be hopefully honest with you, but also kind. They will recognize your strengths. They would also be very honest with you if you're not doing a good job. But making sure that you understand why, what they think that you can do, and how they can help you, right? I think that's really important. And then the next thing I would say is absolutely finding uh, different reasons to make content that almost excludes the idea of confidence. They almost become like confidence almost becomes a byproduct of just doing the thing. And this is what I like to call changing the qualifiers. This is something I always do with my students whenever I see them fall into this trap of like, but it ain't good though. And I said, we'll change the qualifier. Instead of asking yourself why this is awful, why you suck at art, why everything in the world sucks because you exist in the planet, instead of that thought process, you're just like, oh, I'm just going to do 20 thumbnails, or I'm going to draw 40 sketches, or I'm going to do this every single day. I saw somebody wrote on one of my last video, it was a short video. They're like, I'm making a promise. Every time you do these short speed paintings, I'm also going to do painting alongside you. Because they're implicitly saying like, look, you spent like so little time doing this. What's my excuse? And I'm like, heck yeah, I get it. Because they've kind of created a paradigm that allows them to draw more, not draw less. And I'm here for it. I think that's awesome. You know what I mean? And so I think the more people begin to respect and to accept these types of challenges throughout their life that almost independently have nothing to do with whether they do a good job or not. They're just doing it because they're just going to do it. The irony is that they will become good at the thing that they're just doing often. I was talking to my buddy about this. I was saying, because they're like, well, I should practice. I should find some time to practice because, I'm trying to make the bread out here. And I said, you should be practicing all the time. I still practice all the time. I said, because of me doing the YouTube videos like I'm doing right now, like as a proxy, y'all, like just doing these videos for the sake of doing them, just to do it because you guys are fun to be attentive to. I was telling them, like, because of just me doing these videos so often, I've just been getting better and better at painting. Like I've been feeling my skill grow indirectly by just doing this. And it's been a really fascinating exercise. And I was talking about how like when I first started working in a AAA studio, I absolutely remember essentially not having stopped practicing. I remember when I was working for Sony Santa Monica, I did like a lot of lunch sketches. And I was explaining how I was just doing these lunch sketches because I always wanted to stay on top of my personal abilities. Because I remember I got laid off before that, like my last job, I got laid off. And I didn't have a portfolio to show. And I just remember never again. I'm going to always try to keep my portfolio relatively updated. And I think in the last 5 years, last year or two, like specifically since I've been doing art directing roles, I actually fell off quite a lot. I wouldn't post nearly as much, but I used to be able to post no less than like 2 or 3 times a week, no matter where I was in my career, which is an incredible feat if I've been doing this for decades. And now that I am doing the YouTube videos, since the death of my close friend Rob Sevilla, I basically was like, I'm just going to do videos again. And it started off just as a look, this is in memory of my buddy because he used to do this type of stuff. He used to teach me. We used to hang out all the time, and we would just talk about art, similar to kind of how I'm talking to you guys. Except it was the difference is I was talking with somebody else. This time I was just talking with you guys indirectly. Um, but because I'm drawing something different, and I'm practicing, and some of these videos I would like actually have some reference images, so I would kind of keep myself fresh too. I'm like, I want to draw something and kind of learn from it, you know. So I actually absolutely was giving myself something to work off of as well. That, I mean, as an indirect result, I'm just getting better. And I see it, like I said, I can see it in my work and like my professional work in a matter of months. It's pretty awesome. And what I wanted to say is like, yeah, I just literally have been drawing since, what was it, early March? We just started May. So that's March, April. Yeah, about 2 months of consistent drawing and painting for myself because of this YouTube channel. Some days, I think there was only that one sick day that I didn't draw anything. I just posted a video that I already had cooked. And then I think the other day when my wife had her birthday, I think those were like probably the only 2 days where I didn't do anything of like long. Like I think even my short speed paintings still have a lot of value. It perfects efficiency, but my like pen sketch, I don't know. It's just nice to doodle. I don't know if it gives me huge leaps and bounds. But doing something like this, like what you're seeing me do right now, is a pretty remarkable thing to constantly be trying to do. You know? And I'm always trying to do something a little bit different. And I was looking at some of my older YouTube videos that I made, you know, like what the products were. And I'm looking at what I'm doing now in the same amount of time. And it's very clearly I'm just getting better, you know? And again, my confidence allows me to be like, I'm not afraid of criticism. I'm not afraid if people don't like the ultimate finished product, because what I'm trying to do is create content where I'm just talking and painting. And if the painting is good at the end of it, that's great. That's wonderful. If the painting's mediocre, that's okay. At least I talked. If what I said in my talk wasn't as impactful as like another video, it's very clear there's some videos that people are responding to very aggressively. They're like, oh my God, this changed my life. And there's other videos that are like, nice video, you know? So it's clear that even some of my video content isn't the best. But again, if I was always worried about each video being the best, then I just probably wouldn't make videos. Not because I lack the confidence, but because I don't want to spend so much time on this. I have a full-time gig, you know, I work quite a bit. And the confidence comes in to the fact that, no, I think that this will have an audience. I believe that this will find its people. And I am steadily growing YouTube subscribers every week. I'm getting hundreds and hundreds of new subscribers. So clearly there's a breadth of people who like want this type of content. They've been yearning for this type of content, where it's just like a person that they admire, their insight, just fucking talking at them. Because I know fucking I would have loved that when I was going into this business, like when I was starting out. So I know that this was going to have some semblance of success in some meaningful way. I don't know if I'm going to be those YouTubers that have tens of millions of followers. I am almost certain that's never going to happen. But I definitely believe that this can get pretty big. I just don't know where that number will be. I would be pretty satisfied if it was in the high hundreds of thousands. I don't think it needs to be millions. I think if it got like, this channel got like 200 to 300,000 subscribers, I think that would be pretty solid. That's pretty meaningful number. And I think I'd be incredibly content with that number. And that would be like a goal that I feel, oh, I've achieved it. I've achieved this success of what I thought this YouTube channel can do. And with the kind of content that I provide. Again, pretty like authentic, speaking to the camera type, or speaking to the canvas type of content. But again, like this confidence that I have of just like, yeah, I mean, people might like it, people might not like it. I don't know if I'm out here trying to make content for them then. I'm just trying to make content because I want to show up. It's starting to become a habit, and it's starting to become something that I feel like is healthy for me to do. And as a result, I feel my art is getting better. I feel like my dictation, like the way that I'm explaining things is getting a little bit sharper, you know? I feel like the kinds of things I want to learn are becoming, sparked because of just the idea of, like, what should I paint today? Nothing but positivity has come from me doing this. And I am very happy that I basically stuck with it. And I have my buddy Rob to thank, because again, he was one of those people that was all about sharing knowledge with the art community. It's one of the reasons why I became ultimately a good teacher, is because of people like him in my life. And ultimately, any kind of success that comes from this will also be, the roses will be passed to him yet again. If I'm ever in a situation where I win an award for this content, I almost certainly will congratulate, or not congratulate, pay my respects to my buddy Rob, and then also probably give the reward to his family. I don't really think I need it, but it would be cool for them to have, just as another reminder and token to how awesome Rob was to them as well, and the kind of impact he had on lots of people's lives. And that was enough. That's enough. And if that was the spark to help give me some confidence to do this, that's all I needed. And I think for a lot of you guys, again, change the qualifier. Like, change what matters to you. For me, hey, I'm just going to do YouTube videos in remembrance of my buddy Rob. If it's not good, who cares? It's not for that. It's for me more than anything. And then, almost as a tool to mourn. But then it's also like, for you, what is that? And you can see that this type of self-confidence, this type of confidence is way more effective and more useful, because it's not asking for anyone else's opinion. You're just doing it because you feel good about doing it. And again, I think that there are some pragmatic tools when it comes to be professional and how to achieve a professional skill, and then apply these types of confidence to that world. But I think this is more important for me to kind of talk about, is like the confidence that you guys have for yourself. Literally, when you're by yourself and nobody's watching you draw, there's no art police like ready to knock down your door because you fucking used the wrong color palette. You know what I mean? There's not like a army of artists who are rooting for your demise. And you've done it. You've made that one painting that they always knew you would do poorly, and now they're going to tell everybody online that you suck. You know? I have a really close friend who messaged me one time. He was like, bro, I can't believe all these fucking haters, dude. Like, he sends me a screenshot of this comment. And the comment was really rude. It was very mean. It wasn't very nice. Said a lot of the things that I think would really strike a chord with anybody, to be honest. And he was just like, can you believe this? Like, what does this guy fucking know about anything? He was going off. And I was like, I don't think that you should be paying attention to this. You should actually do me a favor and like look at the vast majority of other comments. Just look at all the other comments. Look at all the other things that people are saying And tell me if they also agree with this guy or if it's just this one person out of like thousands of comments. And sure enough, he's like, yeah, I mean, listen, like the vast majority of people are really pumped about what I posted and they really are inspired or whatever. But like this guy is really getting on my nerves. Like I fucking see him all the time and he's always says this stupid shit. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, seems to me like ignore it. Obviously, this person feels like they are riling some anger in you and it's working. And it's very stereotypical to say, but like this is the type of thing that they want. They want this type of attention, right? These types of individuals. So I think it might be good to just ignore it and instead double down on all the positive comments. There was this young artist recently that I saw where she posted this really beautiful acrylic marker painting that she did. And I guess some people didn't believe it and were kind of calling her out on it. And she's just made like a response video of like showing her actually painting. And it's like obvious that she painted it. And I messaged her. I was basically saying, ignore those people. They truly don't bring you any good value in your growth. Criticism, again, is a whole different beast. But this is just people trying to get you mad. And she agreed. She's like, yeah, I think you're right. I was like, yeah, just focus on all the positive vibes and all the people who will make you better. The people who may give you feedback, but it's positive. It is helpful. It's going to make you stronger as an artist. And I said, including me, I think you're incredible. Like you inspired me to like get into traditional drawing again. Like freaking awesome. Like keep it up. And she was just like, oh man, that's really nice. I'm like, yeah, it's so much better. It's a much healthier environment to surround yourself with folks like this who are not constantly naysaying and living in a world of hate and despair, And yeah, again, my buddy, going back to that, like he's one of the best artists literally in the world. And he was letting this person get to him. And I'm just like, what? And I think that when you think about it from an external point of view, I think when you guys are hearing me say this, you're like, yeah, of course, ignore that motherfucker. What does that person know? I'm just saying, yeah, reverse Uno. Don't do it to yourself either. You guys are doing it to yourself too. I'm also trying to tell you, like, externally, you would never accept it. So why are you doing it internally? You see the conundrum here? I don't know which one I like anymore. Let's see. Let's bring it back. Maybe here. I like this idea that I painted it all on one color scheme and then I change it at the very end. And so if you clicked on this video, you were expecting it to look like this the entire time. And then you're like, wait, he's been painting it blue this entire time? And then I changed it just to prove that values are king and colors are illusions. Colors are a lie. It's all about them values. Yeah, I think I might do that. I might stick to this. This is pretty powerful. I do like this nightshade version, but anyway. But listen, I got to get going. It's been a good long video. Felt like I had to do a super long one. I did two or three super short ones in a row. So I felt like, yeah, let me do a longer form video. And I got some time today. So let's do it. Anyway, I'll see you guys in my next video. Hope you guys feel a lot better. Oh yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe, friends. Let's get me to that few 100,000 subscriber count, bro. Help me get there, brethren. Talk to you then.